Yo, I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart, which is the Stax SR-X9000s. It's been 1 year since I received the headphones, and I just wanted to go through what I've learned and also what I think of the headphones after owning them for 1 year. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the build quality, some of the boring stuff here. The build quality of the headphones is amazing. It's very sturdy. It's made of metal. The headband is well built with the new Stax design. The only issue that I've had with the headband is that the headband adjustment tends to slip if you are nodding your head a lot while you're listening to music, like I do. So overall, as you can see, the headphones still look essentially brand new after 1 year of use. It has maybe about 400 or 500 hours of head time on them, and the only other thing that I had an issue with is the ear pads. The ear pads, from time to time, I would wipe them with some lens wipes, and I've noticed that the dye or something flakes off of the ear pads. So there's a little bit of color. Some of the color is fading away on the part of the ear pads that touches my ears. So, with those things out of the way, the boring stuff, the build quality and the comfort and whatnot. In terms of comfort, the headphones are very comfortable. I think I prefer the SR-X9000's comfort to pretty much any other Stax headphones that I've ever owned. So that does bode well for the comfort of the headphones for long-term listening. So now on to the more exciting part, which is the sound of the headphones, the SR-X9000s. So as you know from my prior videos, that the only real other headphone that I listen to is the Stax SR-007 Mark Is. And prior to owning the X9000s, I had owned the 007 Mark Is for 3.5 years. And the 007 Mark Is were my exclusive headphones for 3.5 years. So I have a very intimate relationship with the 007 Mark Is. And as you know, I love them a lot. So the interesting thing about the X9000s is the X9000s excels at pretty much all of the aspects that you would think is important for a headphone. So the X9000s are better than the 007 Mark Is in a lot of the main things that we think about when we think about headphone sound. So the X9000s excel at spectrum balance, so frequency balance. So the bass, the mids, the highs, they're all very well represented on the X9000s. The detail of the X9000s is fantastic. The bass response, even the thickness of the sound nowadays is not something that I am particularly unsatisfied about. The thickness and the kind of like the meatiness of the X9000s is appropriate in my opinion, after switching around some of my amps and some of my DACs. So right now I am using the X9000s with a KGSS HV carbon along with a topping D90 LE DAC. And this combination to my ears is probably the best that I've heard on the X9000s. And I had a friend of mine who is also a long-time headphone and a long-time Stax owner and very well experienced headphone nerd kind of guy. and he listened to the X9000s, and he thought that the X9000s were just fantastic. He thinks that Stax Engineering did a really good job with the X9000s, and he had only heard it for about 20 minutes. So I think the X9000s are a headphone that really does make a very good first impression for a lot of headphone people, and for the very reasons that I mentioned it before. It has very good imaging, it has very good frequency balance, it has very good detail. The sound is very big because the drivers are very big. It really hits all the right marks for a good headphone on first impression. So one of the things that I've mentioned before in my final SR-X9000 versus 007 Mark I comparison video is the presentation of the X9000's sound. And to this day, 1 year later, I still find that the X9000's presentation of the sound in terms of the imaging and just the way that the sound is, that the way that the sound comes to my ears and how I imagine the geometry of the room and whatnot as the sound is emanating from the images on the soundstage of the X9000s. So the main difference that you will notice if you've listened to the 007 Mark Is for a long time and then you move to the X9000s, this takes a little bit of time to actually notice, but the X9000's sound images seem like they're coming from like kind of like a flat surface. So imagine sounds on the soundstage emanating from a flat surface. For example, if you have somebody's voice or if you have an instrument on the X9000s, it seems like the sound is more, the image of the sound is more flat on the soundstage in terms of the dimensionality of the sound waves, I guess, that are emanating from the instrument or from the voice on the soundstage. So on the 007 Mark Is, the images are fuller, they're more rounded. The 007 Mark Is has a way of making it seem like the sound emanating from the images on the soundstage are reflecting or are emanating in all directions from the sound source. So when there's a sound on the soundstage of the 007 Mark Is, it kind of the sound emanates out from the image in all directions, versus the X9000s where the sound seems like it's emanating in only one dimension. It's like a two-dimensional sound emanation, you can say. So this is something that is very obvious if you have listened to both of these headphones for a prolonged period of time and you're used to a certain presentation of the sound. And it is one of the things that really bothers me about the X9000s. Over time, now that I've tuned my ears to recognize this sort of sound image presentation, I've found that it is just not natural. Like the way that the X9000s emanates the sound in this certain way just makes it sound not natural. And it doesn't matter, everything else about the X9000s is amazing, but this one thing just makes me not love the sound in the same way that I love the 007 Mark I's sound. And the other thing about the X9000's presentation that is fairly odd is that when you have a song or a piece where there's an instrument that only sounds like it's on one channel, like the left channel or the right channel, I'm pretty sure you have listened to these types of songs before where you'll have maybe one guitar on one channel and maybe another different instrument on the other channel, and it doesn't feel like it's not centered. It's just on one side of the headphone. In these situations, the X9000s makes these instruments on one channel seem like they're very far away from the soundstage. And what happens is you get this effect where there's some vocals or something going on in the center image, and then the sounds from these other instruments on the side images seem like they're very far away, and this makes it also sound unnatural. Whereas on the 007 Mark I's, the sounds from these side images are closer to your face, and so it feels like these instruments are still in the same room as the center images. And overall, another thing with the X9000's presentation is, yes, the soundstage seems bigger and whatnot, but in a lot of songs, the soundstage does feel kind of boxy. It feels like the soundstage is doing like a thing like this, where it's like a box, and you get the sound images from this face of the box from the center, and then you have these two sides where sound images are coming from these two sides, and it just feels kind of more boxy versus the more full, the more rounded soundstage. Not even soundstage. I wouldn't say like it's like I'm not saying that the 007 Mark I's has a more rounded soundstage. It just sounds, the sounds on the soundstage of the 007 Mark I's are fuller, and they just sound like, it doesn't sound odd in terms of having this boxy character that the X9000s has on certain songs. So overall, what I'm trying to say is the X9000s sound fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of good things about it in terms of the frequency balance, the detail, the bigness of the sound, and everything about it is good. The build quality is good, the comfort's good, but it's the Achilles heel, in my opinion, of the X9000s. Is its unnatural presentation. And after 1 year of owning it, there have been long stretches, maybe like 2 months, where I really did enjoy the X9000s. But when I go back to the 007 Mark I's, I always am more engaged when I listen to the 007 Mark I's, because it just sounds more natural. And I know a lot of people don't have issues with the 007 Mark I's because of its bassy character signature. And the thing with the 007 Mark I's bassy signature is that it's something that you can get used to, something that you can over time adapt to. The issue with the X9000's unnatural presentation is for me, it's very difficult to adapt to it, because I'm constantly not engaged in the sound because it doesn't sound real to me, as in it doesn't sound like something I'm seeing in front of my face. The 007 Mark I's more consistently make me feel like I'm seeing the music in front of my face, in terms of hearing the sound images and being able to visualize them as something real in front of my face. So take that for what you will, and hopefully you have a chance to listen to the X9000s along with the 007 Mark I's for a prolonged period of time. Because as I mentioned before, the X9000s, if you listen to them for 30 minutes, an hour, you will be impressed, because it's a lot of the issues with them aren't really obvious on first impression, and for a lot of people it might not ever be obvious because they don't own a 007 Mark I to make this comparison to. And maybe you'll never be annoyed by the X9000's presentation. Maybe you'll love the X9000 for its merits. But for me, the 007 Mark Is are still the king. Thanks for watching.